Good afternoon, everyone. This is Gretchen Rowe for the Demi Learning Show, and I am so excited to welcome Angie Wakeman to talk to me today about hybrid learning.
Hi, thanks, Gretchen. My name is Angie Wakeman. I live in Pennsylvania. I have a husband named Chad, and I have three daughters. And I was a high school English teacher. I went to public school and I taught in a public school and just kind of expected that was the trajectory we would go on as a family. And then, like, just one thing after the next started pointing my heart more toward homeschooling, which I considered doing with some fear and trembling. Fast forward 7 years later, and I'm working at a hybrid. We call it an academy. It's really a supplement for homeschool families.
What changed your mind from a public school persona to a homeschool persona? Because sometimes I want parents to be able to fit themselves into, oh, yeah, that happened to me, or, oh, I hadn't considered that.
It was probably a couple of things. One of them is that my oldest daughter was in a play-based preschool, and so that was, I think, more instrumental than I sometimes remember. Because I thought, before you go to kindergarten, you go to preschool, and so it was probably providential that she ended up at this play-based preschool. So I liked the way that I saw her learning, and that it engaged her curiosity, and that they were using an educational model that says children do learn through play. And there were a couple of families who were like, well, the preschool is great, but we actually have to go home and get them ready for real school, which felt really problematic to me. So I liked what I was seeing there. And then our local school district, the year that my daughter was turning 5, went from half day kindergarten to full day kindergarten. And I just got the sense that it was a lot of like test prep and a lot of rigor is what they were really pushing for. And my sense was that it was coming at the expense of their childhood. And so that was like number two, issue number two. And then my co-founder Rebecca and I both had our daughters in our preschool together. We went to church together, and we would always have conversations about education. And she was far more like homeschool prepared than I was. So she was like that. And then I knew several other friends from our church also who were thinking about homeschooling. And so for me, I think like knowing other people who homeschooled sort of gave me permission to say, well, if so and so's doing it, I guess I can do it. And then I guess just to say the fourth thing, my husband was homeschooled up through 8th grade. And so he would often say, you're a teacher, you should homeschool. And I'm like, I'm a teacher, I shouldn't homeschool. So really, it was like this series of things that just got my attention. And then I think the final thing for me was there was somebody at the preschool who was talking about a Waldorf charter school that was in our area. And I was like, what's Waldorf? And so I went home and I looked it up, and I was like, oh, I like this approach to education that's more holistic and that honors childhood. And that was, I think, like another thing for me was like getting at an educational philosophy that I really agreed with. And so I think it wasn't really a leap into just homeschooling. It was like I could homeschool if I had help. And so my co-founder and I started our program, Providence Hybrid Academy, the year that my daughter was going into kindergarten.
So you started right from the very beginning with this idea. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about how Providence Hybrid Academy functions, because I think it will help parents understand. You said you felt you could homeschool if you had help. So what does that help look like?
Yeah. So in our model, we're an educational nonprofit. We are legally a supplement for homeschoolers. We're not legally a school. And so we function, I mean, like on paper, we're a little bit more like a co-op as far as we're serving homeschoolers. But we have teachers and they're employees of our organization. And so parents get to drop their students off for 2 days a week of classes. And so we always felt like you're meeting people in the middle. You're not homeschooling entirely by yourself. You're not 5 long days of school, traditional school. It's a little bit of both. And so we felt like it was the best of both worlds as far as that goes. So we decided, because students were going to be with us for 2 days a week, that we wanted to cover reading and math. And so we do offer reading and math classes, as well as a pretty wide range of subjects. We are follow Charlotte Mason's methodology, and so we've used a lot of as much as we can in 2 days a week fit in classes that are aligned with her philosophy. So we have artist and composer study from kindergarten on up. We have nature study from kindergarten through 6th grade. And then we do history and geography as well. We provide book lists for families that they can use, and our teachers post in Google Classroom every week what they covered and make suggestions for what families can do at home. So I think the support comes through like not having to be alone, being part of a community, and then having somebody else's like voice speaking into your child's life, as well as that. I'll say academic accountability. That might not be a great word, but just the academic support, and then also somebody else who is witness to your child and like, is it just me that, or is it the math curriculum, or is it like, do we need to spend less time on handwriting? You have another voice to say, well, this is what I see as well, and so we provide support in that capacity.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. In fact, we're doing an episode next week entitled "Is it the kid, the curriculum, or me?" Because sometimes we're good at self-doubt. And so we wanted to break that apart for parents so that they can do a little bit of diagnostics to figure out where the pushback or the challenges are arising. So you're kind of meeting all those challenges with parents really coming alongside them. What ages do you serve?
So we serve kindergarten through, we're opening up 11th grade next year. So we've added a grade level every year, more or less. There were a couple of years that we did like a combined 4th through 6th, and that was like a new thing. So yeah, so almost a full K-12 program.
My goodness. Well, for somebody who wasn't sure you could homeschool alone, you really have bitten off a lot. So, what's probably the most valuable lesson you've learned in this process?
Ooh, as a homeschooler or as a like an employee. So like
Well, I'm going to ask it in two different directions. Let me ask it first as a personal aside. What's the most valuable thing you've learned in this process? Because you're not just serving your children, you're
mm,
serving a bunch of kids.
I think I think probably the most valuable thing I'm learning is to let go of control.
Oh, that's always a hard one. If you manage to figure that out, will you give me some clues? I think control freaks are born, not made. So, and as an educator, what surprised you most at stepping into a world like this?
I'm surprised at how much I love homeschooling. Um, I Yeah, and I think there's a homeschool mindset that's been um it's been a learning curve for me. I think like one of the things that really stuck out to me is when you're a classroom teacher and like lessons don't go well, it's always like, oh, what did I do wrong? And you're always looking at how can I change things the next time. And I feel like a go-to with homeschoolers, and to the point of your seminar next week, is oh, it must be the curriculum, let's just change the curriculum. So that was an interesting like mindset shift I've seen, and I definitely have had my times where I'm like, ah, it must be the curriculum. And how can you not let the curriculum be the boss of you? You're always the boss of the curriculum, but like I'm a rule follower and I like my checklist. So that's been a learning process for me to say this person that I'm working with matters more than what is on today's agenda. So yeah, so those are some things that been helpful to learn as I educate my own children. But yeah, I don't think I could ever go back to a conventional way of learning.
And so, what are the ages of your children now?
I have a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 7-year-old, all girls.
Wow, goodness gracious, that's a handful. That's the age spread between my three girls, but they're in their 30s now. So, and what if we ask them, what would they say they found most fascinating about a hybrid experience?
Probably their friends, recess. That they like their teachers. They really like their teachers. So I think those would be like their top three things.
So how does one, if I'm listening to you and I'm a mom who says, "Gee, I'd like the homeschool experience, but I don't think I can do it all alone or solo." How did you start this? I mean, you had conversations with your friends, so give me some insight into where those conversations began. Did you Did you start with the idea, or did you start with the curriculum, or did you start with a concept?
Yeah, so Rebecca and I spent a lot of time talking about this. Our daughters would hang out after preschool was over on the playground, and we would just talk through all of our options. And Rebecca's really great at looking at things and saying, like, there's got to be a better way to do things. And I think I was such a product of public school, it felt very hard to walk away from that. And so we had those conversations, and I think because of the part-time model of preschool, Rebecca was like, can you do this through like elementary school, like have a part-time model? And so somewhere in there, as we were researching stuff, we found that the hybrid model existed in other states. And so that was like, oh, okay. All right. And then I had to get my mind wrapped around paying tuition. It was like an additional hurdle for me. Um, so it was more like, okay, this model exists. And so I know I spent some time like reading different hybrid programs, websites, and a lot of the ones we saw were either like super traditional as far as like textbook worksheet kind of thing, or they were classical. And those are great for like the families who are aligned with that. But like I said, the Waldorf method really resonated with me as far as being holistic, and I think not rushing children through childhood. So we were like, we're going to be there 2 days a week. We still want them to get outside and have recess. And so Rebecca was familiar with Charlotte Mason's philosophy because she had been homeschooled, and that just felt like bringing those two things together, like a part-time model and then the educational philosophy felt like the two things that really helped like move us forward. And then we knew a lot of people from our church who were interested in something in between, or like friends who had been homeschooled, but they said, we want somebody to help us homeschool our kids, or friends who had gone to Christian school but said it was too expensive. They couldn't afford that on one income. So, like, what's the in between? So, we just knew enough people that were like, what's the in between? And then seeing that this was a model that existed, having the educational approach. And then we actually did start as a co op our first year to test things out. And so we picked up a couple of families that way, specifically one person who was like such a spokesperson for us and really like Charlotte Mason's philosophy. So she was like inviting people from her church, and we knew people from our church. And so it was just because we knew a small cohort of people, we started pretty small. I did some of the teaching, and a couple of the other moms did teaching in childcare. So we did like a once a week, 3 hour co-op for like 30 weeks and tested out like, what does this look like in practice with this age group? And then, but we also told everybody when we started, our plan is to start a hybrid program. And so that was like helped us build a base of support. And then the following year, we opened a
Now,
hybrid program.
in tandem with that, did you create a nonprofit, or did you roll a couple years before you said, oh, gee, we need to be a nonprofit?
Rebecca did a really helpful consultation with a CPA who I think is retiring now, Carol Top, and
And I knew that's who you were going to say. Carol's wonderful.
the homeschool CPA. And that was just really helpful because she outlined like what our structure could be. So it was LLC, you could be the ministry of a church or you could be a nonprofit. And she, I think, outlined what the differences were between those. And it felt like when the mission is what you're really serving and that's what's driving you, then a nonprofit is a good organization or organizational structure. I mean, our church like building wasn't big enough, and it wasn't in the right like setting. There was, it's in the middle of a city. There's no green space, so that wasn't really going to work for us. But that could have been another option for us, I think, if the building had been right and if the church had been open to that, but we didn't talk to them. So so we went into it knowing we wanted to register as a nonprofit.
And how long? I mean, I helped a co-op create a nonprofit status, but that was probably 27 years ago. So I'm wondering if the process has changed. How long did it take you to get established as a nonprofit?
Yeah, so in Pennsylvania, there's two levels. So you have to register with the state, and that's pretty simple. And Rebecca did that right away. So we had that early on, being registered with the state as an incorporation. And then depending on the type of paperwork you want to file, like if you want, there's a long form for the IRS, and that is based on how much you're going to make every year. And if in your first 3 years you're going to exceed a certain amount, I think it was 50,000 when we started, then you're supposed to do the long form. If your revenue is going to be under 50,000, then you can do the short form. And so we were under that for the first couple of years, but we're like, wow, we could exceed that. So we went with the long form, and we did hire a CPA to fill out that paperwork for us, because you want to get that right. It was expensive to hire somebody to do that. So you get 23 months, I think, to get that paperwork done. So we waited our first year and had some funding at that point from tuition to help us pay for that. So we didn't pay for that out of pocket.
So how many children do you have now at the academy?
So we have 215 students this year.
Oh, oh my goodness.
We ran on Thursdays and Fridays for our first like 6 years. And then we just had a wait list every year for the last 3 years, and it kept getting bigger. And so we actually asked our host church 3 times if we could duplicate our program on a Monday and Tuesday, run the same thing, but with new families. And finally, the third time we asked them, they said yes. And so that's part of why our numbers are there, is because we're running kindergarten to 8th grade on Mondays and Tuesdays. And then we have kindergarten to 10th grade on Thursdays and Fridays.
Oh, I see. Okay. So is the Monday, Tuesday cohort different from the Thursday, Friday cohort?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally different families.
Boy, that's a lot of administration. So how do you have time to be a mom and a homeschooler on top of all this administration? Because that's a lot.
I'm home 3 days a week. So somebody else is running our Monday, Tuesday program, and I check in with her, and I meet up with her once a month on campus. So um, yeah, it is a balancing act. And I think because I started when my youngest was uh, I started and I was pregnant with my third one, and my youngest was going into kindergarten. It was um it was just a different beast. It was like a labor of love back then. And also, I think for some personalities, when you're just home, it can be like the domestic life can be a little like, more diapers, more dishes, more, more laundry, more scrubbing the toilet. And so I got joy from the planning phase and from researching and learning new stuff. And so it didn't feel like overwhelming or like a burden. And we did a lot of the planning. Rebecca and I did a lot of the planning, like meeting up over play dates with our kids, and we were able to do it that way. It really was a passion project for both of us. And the kids were small enough that homeschooling didn't take nearly as long when you have one kindergartner as it does now. So the more that my girls have grown, and adding in my third one 2 years, like last year, it has definitely like it's just been challenging. I'm spending more time homeschooling them. I do tend to administrate a little bit every afternoon from home. So I have like a 1 or 2 hour work block in the afternoons, um, which works. It works okay for us because we finish our lessons, they play. We're not involved in a lot of things. That's probably one of the things that like has fallen by the wayside, both because of I think my capacity and just my kids' interest. Like we're not involved in any clubs, any classes, any sports. I probably would struggle if we were doing that. And the afternoon work block is good for me. That leaves my mornings for like um, kind of having a quiet, slow morning, focusing on my kids in the morning through their lessons. I generally don't work at night. Some people I've talked to, like that's when they do. They wait till the kids are in bed and they set that boundary. But I need my sleep. So I usually don't work at night unless I have a meeting. So I've tried to put in some boundaries for myself. But it's an active process because there is the ability to get consumed.
I think it's really wonderful though that you know yourself well enough, and that a parent who's saying, maybe I might be able to try that, should kind of look at how do you function best before you take this on. So did parents come to you and say, hey, I'd like to see Providence teach this curricula, or did you and your business partner decide what you were going to teach?
Yeah, we decided what we were going to teach because of the driving educational philosophy from Charlotte Mason. So, and for better or for worse, I enjoy curriculum. That was like something I really like. I would spend summers as a teacher working on curriculum planning. So I got a lot of joy out of doing that. We could have easily, I think, like bought somebody else's curriculum and implemented it, but I pulled the pieces together based on what I was learning about her method and our unique 2 days at school. So certainly there would be a less time intensive way of doing that if you just use somebody else's already put together curriculum.
And then how did you recruit? You say you have teachers who are, do the teachers teach Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday, or do you have different groups of teachers?
I had mostly different groups of teachers, which was
Really?
interesting. And I shared that with somebody, Carrie McDonald. I had done a podcast with her. And when I told her like what that ended up being like, she said, well, you have teachers who just want part-time, and like that's good data too. So that overwhelmingly it seems to be what we have. A lot of our parents, excuse me, a lot of our teachers, at least over half, are also homeschooling parents. So this is like the community for them and that they need, and allows them to also work and be at the on campus with their kids as well. So it's a good fit for some of our teachers who are also homeschooling moms.
So are your teachers who are on campus, their children are on campus at the same time, or do you are the children on campus Monday, Tuesday, and they teach Thursday, Friday? I'm
Yeah, they're
trying to get
we
people to understand how you modeled that or
yeah, their families generally are moving as a unit. So if the mom's here is teaching or working, her kids are here on campus that day, and then they're usually home. I mean, most hybrid models we've looked at are doing like a Tuesday, Thursday, or like maybe Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. We have a unique schedule that was really influenced by our preschool. But I think when we early on, I checked in with our teachers and I'm like, should we like go to this every other day a week thing that other people are doing? Our teachers who are teaching here, I think appreciate being able to compartmentalize
Mm.
like home life and school. And so they like your focus is on your kids homeschooling at home, and then they start to shift gears and they come here.
So tell us what a day would be like for an elementary student at Providence Hybrid. What would they expect to do in a day?
Yeah. We have a morning time where they're doing some memory work. They're learning hymns and scripture and poetry. They're reading the Bible. They have snack time. They have recess. And then they'll come back in. You said kindergarten, right?
Sure.
Specifically. So they come back in for like shorter lessons. They do a little handwriting, a little reading, little math. They have extra playtime. They also have rest time. And then they have an afternoon recess and nature study.
Wow. Kindergarten rest time sort of fell by the wayside about 30 years ago, didn't it? I think it's so smart of you to include that because you're meeting the child where they are developmentally.
Yeah, the days are long for them. At the beginning of the year, some of the kids actually fall asleep. And by the end of the year, they tend to outgrow it and not need it as much. So sometimes it's more shushing than anything else. But I do think like some of them really need that downtime. And that's how my kindergarten experience was we had a nap time. I fell asleep because my teacher bribed me, and we had playtime. And I felt like when my daughter was going into kindergarten, I was like, it doesn't look like that anymore at all. So
We're expecting more and more from children at younger and younger ages, and it it becomes, to their detriment. I'm just finishing this book by Jennifer Breheny Wallace. It's called Never Enough, and it's talking about how we have changed the education system to demand more and more of students at younger and younger ages. And I think you've been very wise in the way you have developed your curricula. So for, say, a fourth or a fifth grader, how many academics are they going to do in that day?
so we really tried to like focus on what we could do well in those days. And some things we're just not covering at PHA. Like they're just getting grammar and spelling at home. We don't do a lot of geography. And so we tried to keep a consistent schedule. So that said, there were just decisions we had to say no to doing this at PHA. What can we do really well on our 2 days? So they are getting science, they're getting math, they're getting literature, and they'll do written narrations. So we're not teaching like formal composition or anything, but they're doing little writing, history. And then they're also doing artist and composer study. They're also doing a morning time where they're doing memory work and reading the Bible. And then they also get nature study, and they also still get 2 recesses.
Wow, that's awesome. That's amazing. So how long is a day? What time do you begin in the morning and what time do you end in an afternoon?
Like a 6 hour day. So 9:30 to 3:30.
Wow, that's amazing. You're accomplishing an enormous amount in that period of time. What is the size of a class? How many kids do you have in a class?
Usually 14 or 15. We've stuck with trying to keep our classes on the smaller side.
That's probably really good because if you've got a smaller group of kids, it's less crowd control and more personal interaction.
Yeah, it feels like you're serving homeschool families and their kids are used to getting a lot of individualized attention. So I think when that class size starts going up, you're kind of like you're undoing, what
Right.
families value, I think.
Right. So how are you structuring high school classes then? Are you offering different classes or are you just saying, this is what we're going to offer and you have to figure out where to get the rest?
I think we've really committed to doing the core classes that would be required for a transcript. Um, but again, in 2 days, there is only so much that you can do. So we have an elective class once a week, and we started this like once a month program as well that our high schoolers have access to like explore career stuff. And we have like a fitness component and a practical skill. But otherwise, like we're really doing the core on Thursdays and Fridays. And that model is a little bit different. They're getting math both days of the week and they're getting foreign language both days, but otherwise, science is once a week, history is once a week, um, English is once a week, Bible's once a week. So they're getting these courses only once a week for the
So
rest.
their classes are a little bit more split, but you have a little bit more that you can offer them in the way of content that way as well.
Yeah, yeah, they're doing a lot of their like the reading at home. The teachers are assigning what they should be doing on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. And then it's almost like a college class in that they're coming into class on Thursday or Friday, ready to review their work and contribute to class and make progress forward that way.
I like the way you've structured that because in a way it's an implicit self-exploration, but a self-discipline as well. You you don't want to be behind your friends when you show up in class on Thursday, so you want to make that work. That's great. And do you also have 15 high schoolers then, or did you make the group a little smaller?
Yeah, we're not there yet. It's just been slower to grow. We started with a very small group of students. So we started with 6 kids. But we're seeing more interest for next year. And then our current seventh graders, it's kind of a larger class, and they've started in kindergarten with us. That's the class that my oldest is in. So I think when they get to high school, we'll have a better sense of like, is this really in demand from our families, or do we are we going to lose families to like dual enrollment and we have to stop after 10th grade? So,
Sure. And dual enrollment is something that's possible in Pennsylvania because not every state allows that. So,
yeah, it is. You can't take your full course load through a college, is my understanding, but I think they can take two, I think it's 2 classes at a community or another like online. There's a couple of online schools that are pretty affordable.
if I'm a parent listening to our conversation and I'm thinking, "Ooh, this is attractive," what would you tell me to do first?
Yeah, I guess I would start like having conversations with other people, both to see if there's somebody with energy for, the same thing to work with you on it, or to see if you can find a little like group of people who are interested in the same thing. Um, and yeah, I guess I would research your state like requirements as far as how you can get organized and keep things legal.
You know, Angie, there's a book in this somewhere. Someday you're gonna have to write a book about your
There's
experience.
other people. Actually, my co-founder wrote a book. I don't remember the name of it. New School. I think it might be New School on the Block. And there's a really, I mean, if you're like interested in this particular model, there is a growing organization out of Kennesaw State University. It's the Hybrid Schools Project run by Eric Wern. And they have a conference every year in Georgia, which is where Kennesaw is. So that's like open to people. It's super affordable, I think. And that's a really great place
Do your research.
to do research to find out from people who have like gone before you and learned the hard way. He's also Dr. Wern's been doing like regional conferences. So he did one in Pennsylvania in the fall, and I think he's done one out. I want to say somewhere in California. So you could certainly like get on their mailing list and find out about their regional conferences. Um, so yeah, there are a lot of people out there like doing this kind of thing. There's another group, the Vela, they have offered funding for people who are educational entrepreneurs. So there's like definitely a growing arena out there where you could find your people, even if like you can't find them locally yet. There's I think stuff on a national level that can be really helpful in like maybe not having to learn every lesson the hard way.
Great. Absolutely. Angie, this has been such a terrific hour. I really appreciate it. And what this gives us the opportunity to do is to share that you don't have to do it a traditional way to do it very successfully. And I just want to thank you for spending this time with me. This has been amazing. And I wish Providence Hybrid Academy all the best in the process. And maybe we'll check back in with you in a year or so and see how you've grown.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I like never would have expected to be here, but it's been such a blessing. And yeah, like it's just an exciting thing to say, like, this is an option for people. So I'm grateful to be able to share that with your audience.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. We'll look forward to coming into your living room again soon. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Thanks again for joining us. We're glad to be a part of your educational community. You can help us grow our community even more by rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the show wherever you may be hearing this. Don't forget that you can access the show notes and watch a recording at demilearning.com/show or on our YouTube channel. We'll see you again next time. Until then, keep building strong foundations for lifelong learning.